I always like to give the talks on this Sunday because it's still part of Christmas. And I like reminding myself and others that really, I know the 25th has come and gone, but we are in the third day of the Christmas season. The 12 days of Christmas is a period in Christian theology that marks the span between the birth of Christ and the arrival of the wise men, or the returning of the light. And for many years I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it's a wonderful, wonderful place to be at Christmas. There's candles, and Christmas Eve is a big thing, and it's wonderful, but the real party was the one with the return of the wise men. And I cannot even begin to tell you how much joy it brought everyone to have the return of the light. So just as a little sidetrack for a minute this morning, I know our topic today is to believe in the magic, and I want you to believe in the magic. I want all of us to believe in the magic. So let's talk a little about what is this magic that I'm thinking of. It's pretty straightforward. In 567, that the Council of Tours, they proclaimed that the 12 days of Christmas, from Christmas to Epiphany, that's the 5th of January, it was declared as a sacred and festive season, and that everyone needed to spend a lot of time preparing for it, and everyone needed to celebrate it, or else. The reason for the or else is that, you see, the Romans had an administrative problem. As they expanded the Roman Empire, they began to take in places that didn't have their calendar. So you had this conflict going between the Julian calendar, which was solar-based and seasonally based, and it didn't coordinate with the lunar calendar that was from the east. So as the Roman Empire collapsed, it got too big, essentially, and they couldn't control it. As it collapsed, Christianity rose, and then we really had a conflict. So what they did was they moved the belief system from the seasonal solar-based Julian calendar to the more story or tale-based lunar calendar. So hence we came with the 12 days of Christmas. We began to have this period from the solstice to Epiphany, and it began to be that the winter solstice celebration from the Julian calendar and the birth of Jesus celebration from the more Christian calendar came together into this 12 days. 12 days gave everybody a little room. You could sort of fudge and figure out what you wanted to do, and there was one major celebration at this time of year. Now, it's always been a magical time. Ancient peoples were very concerned, really concerned, when they discovered that the light was going away, the light from the sun and the fall and the richness, and suddenly it was darker longer, and it was a fear. There was a great fear amongst early peoples that the light wouldn't come back. They didn't understand the changes and shift in season, but they were afraid that it wouldn't come back. So this history and this tale making between light and dark made its way into Greek mythology. So you had gods of light, you had gods of darkness, and they would battle with one another until the god of light won. Now, early Christianity then inherited both the biblical sense, the story, and the Hellenistic or the more philosophical sense of that calendar, and that came together in this symbolism of light and dark. Originally, Christ, Jesus, was seen as the Son, S-U-N, of righteousness. And early Christians truly saw nothing wrong with celebrating nativity over the date of the pagan Roman festival. So we tend to think of it, oh, it was Son, S-O-N, Son of God, oh yes. But really overlaying that was the fact that it was Son of righteousness, the return of the light for which everyone was very, very grateful. Now, as for the 12 days of Christmas, the choir did a wonderful job with it. I love what they did, and it's exactly what it is. All right? I wish I could tell you that the song was dealing with some deep mystical theological meaning, and years people have spent trying to say, oh, well, the maids of milking meant that, and the swans of swimming meant this. But the truth of the matter is it didn't have any meaning at all like that. The exact origins of the song are kind of lost in the mists of history, but it is highly probable that it originated from a children's memory song that was a game that was played on Twelfth Night. It was a game that the children played. And originally, games were not necessarily encouraged because everyone worked and worked hard and didn't celebrate and didn't stop. So a game from that period would have more of a festive feel to it, and it wasn't something that was done year-round. So, frankly, 12 Days of Christmas is some kind of festive memory game that the children played. The best-known English version didn't arrive until about 1780. And at that point, the participants were required to repeat a piece of poetry that was given to them by the teacher, to repeat it from memory. If they couldn't repeat it, they were required to pay with a kiss, possibly, or a candy, possibly. So it was a give and a take. I give you the piece, you have to say it. If you don't, we get to kiss. Now that's not all bad. So it's not an all bad song. There have been lots and lots of people working to try to come down to what it really meant, and trying to add to it that there was this importance from each piece of the song. And actually, it turns out that the 12 Days of Christmas is more of an urban myth. I know most of you probably know about Snopes, snopes.com, where you can look up tales that you hear, and they do their very best to see if in fact those tales are true. So if you put 12 Days of Christmas into Snopes, what you find is that it was not tied to anything theological, that it was not some sort of surreptitious Catholic teaching, and it's all highly questionable as to whether or not there was any difference at all between the 12 gifts and the Protestant version of a swan versus the Catholic version of a swan. So none of that needed to be secretly recorded, and that all is one of those tales that is probably better left not spread. Now, aren't you glad that we have figured all that out? So now we have the final tale, and that's wonderful, but this is Christmas, this is church. I'm supposed to have some deep theological meaning for you, and so far all I have done is rattle on about this funny song. So, where's the metaphysical magic in French hens? This is the third Sunday. It's 3 French hens. And there have been all kinds of tales about what they mean and what they are, and the fact of the matter is they were hens. And if you look at the pictures of them that they put up on the website in various places, they actually look a little more like roosters. So the fact is, but you know, there's something about 3 French roosters that just doesn't quite do it. So where's the metaphysical meaning of 3 French hens? Well, French hens, it turns out, are carefully reared in a tiny area of France to this day, and they are famed because they have blue feet. All right? Not much metaphysical there. Their story begins in 1591 when the hens were sighted for the first time in the annals of this particular little village. It's a French village named, I got it right, Bourg-en-Bresse. It seemed that King Henry IV had stopped at Bresse because he had some kind of problem with his carriage. And so they gave him dinner, and one of the things that they served him were French hens. He so fell in love with the meat that he demanded that French hens become part of the menu of the castle. So everywhere he went, they had to find and bring French hens for him to eat. So to this day, they're called poulets de Bresse, are raised according to strict government controls in France, in the same village that they were raised in 1541, and they are considered one of the 4th gastronomical miracles of the world. Okay? So, now we know about hens, now we know how good they are to eat, but what is the metaphysical meaning of this? And you know, the more I do metaphysics, the more I study, it's one of those things that you're never done. You can never, ever say, okay, well, I've got my metaphysics down, I'm all finished. You're never, ever done with it, really. And the more of it that I do, the more that I really believe that every single thing has some kind of metaphysical meaning if we'll just look for it. Well, I couldn't find French hens in my favorite go-to book, which is the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. There was just no mention there of French hens. But here in Unity, we do believe that we are all one, and that includes the animal world. It isn't just human beings, it's animals as well. So if it includes the animal world, then it also, metaphysics, includes my French hens. So, if we go to the animal totem world, we find that it turns out that hens showing up in our lives may, in fact, be sending us a clear message that we need to reevaluate our responses to the things that are going on in our lives. Oh. We hear all the time about the need for us all to reevaluate our responses. We're not happy. We're mad on this side. We're not mad on that side. We're yelling. We're carrying on. We, all of us, need to reevaluate our responses. And here are these French hens asking us, are we responding out of fear? Are we responding out of love? Are we backing down when we should be standing up? Does a hen represent useless chatter or unhealthy gossip? Are we distracted listeners? Or are we trying to hear, trying to listen to what each other is saying? You know, French hens can be a symbol of our very, very great potential. And in order to achieve our dreams, we must find the courage to overcome our fears. So, if we go back to the failed conspiracy hearing of the 12 days of Christmas, where they thought that perhaps this was some sort of secret catechism, one of the things that we can get from that is that in that world, 3 French hens stood for faith, hope, and love. Now that's a theme in the Bible, you know, the greatest of these, faith, hope, and charity. Faith, hope, and love. And there is where we find the magic. That's where it arrives, in faith, in hope, and in love. So, if we begin with faith, according to Charles Fillmore, who's one of Unity's co-founders, faith is the most important power that we have. Faith is our perceiving power of the mind, linked to the spiritual assurance that we can do the seemingly impossible. I'm going to repeat that. Faith is the assurance that we, each of us, can do the seemingly impossible. That is the deep inner knowing that we can do what we think we cannot do. The deep inner knowing. You know, Martin Luther King tells us that faith is taking the first step on a stairway that you can't even see. It's a starting out. It's a beginning. Faith. You just do it. You walk out on it. That's faith. Now, in faith, we overcome our fears and we stand up. And when the going gets rough, we don't have to hide. Faith is our belief that we can stand and speak our truth. Another way of overcoming our fears is what we would call hope. Now, I prefer to use there a word called vision. I like vision better than hope. It's a little more active word. Nothing wrong with hope, but vision for me is a better word. Metaphysically, hope is the expectation of good in the future. And vision is the same way. We think somehow, oh, I have a vision, but I'm not living my vision, not right here, not right now. My vision is something that is out there somewhere. Well, I think the difference between hope and faith is that faith is the certain knowledge that our good is ours right now, right here, in this place. Even though it may not look like it, it is right here, right now. It's not somewhere off in the future. It's not me holding on to a vision that, oh, everything will be better in January. Everything will be better once we get the vaccine. Faith and vision has to do with how we are living right here, right now, in this place. Rosa Parks stood up rather than sit in the back of the bus. And she tells us that when our minds are made up, knowing what must be done simply goes away. Our fears simply leave. When we know what must be done, fear goes away. So each of us must stand up now, not next week or in some mysterious, hopeful time in the future. If we are to make the world a better place, we must do it now. Finally, we restore the magic of the season of the time. We restore it with love. Metaphysically, love is the pure essence of our being, the spirit that binds us all together. Love is that inner quality in each of us that sees good everywhere in every one. Love conquers all, but it is each of us that must make it happen. It is not a throwaway phrase. The real question is whether or not our anger, our grievances, our resentments, are those the thoughts we live with day to day? Or does the magic of our faith, our vision, our love, does that magic rule our talk? You know, we really do have to love our neighbors and the immigrants and the politicians and ISIS and the guy that cut us off in traffic. And that's the hard part. We really do have to love all of those people. We have to love if we're going to restore the magic of the season. But you know, standing up for our principles takes courage. Courage is our ability to face danger, face difficulty, face uncertainty, face pain. It's our ability to face all of this without being overcome by our fears. I know there are days when really I'd rather get in bed and pull the covers over my head and hope that it'll all just go away. I get that. But courage is our ability to get up every morning and face it all one more time. When we see something happening that just doesn't seem right, what are we afraid of, really? Are we afraid of retribution? Are we afraid of disapproval? Maybe we're afraid that somehow it'll mess with our image. But courage is about setting aside our fears. Courage is about taking action for the good of the whole. It takes a certain level of courage to disagree with what may appear to be trending at the moment. I know how it is. Our voices tremble, our hands shake, our stomach feels like, golly, it's probably a life or death struggle. Sometimes it just is physically almost impossible to take a step forward. But the magic of courage is about facing the difficulties and not being overcome by them. Doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be anything other than we are facing the things that frighten us the most. So here, on the third day of Christmas, the last Sunday of 2020, this God-forsaken year, and I, like you, am so grateful and glad to see that we are moving on. I think each of us ought to have a Zoom call and check in with our 3 internal French hens and find out how we're doing in faith, hope, and love. Let's reevaluate our responses. Let's take a look and see what is really going on in our lives. Let's take this time, take a moment. We have time right here. It's a good time to take that moment to check in. Check in and remember that it takes courage to be us. It takes courage to do the things that we have set out for ourselves to do. But I know that we can do it. I know that we are strong. I know that we are brave. And I know that we, all of us, everyone, wherever we are located, whatever we do and are being in this life, we, all of us, can make the world a better place. I would like for you to join me in the denial and the affirmation. I didn't write it down to get it up on the board or to get it up on the screen, but you won't have any trouble remembering it. I'll say it first, then I'll go back, we'll say it again, and we can say it together. The first thing is the denial. We have to sweep away the things we don't want. So denial, the denial is fear has no power over me. So we come together now, wherever we are, sitting at home, watching what we're doing, and we put down our coffee cup, and we say in a loud and brave and courageous voice that fear has no power over me. And then quickly, the affirmation. The affirmation is to fill up the space. So equally or quickly, equally with the same voice, the affirmation is, I am living in the magic. I am living in the magic. And so it is. Amen.